He claimed he'd fought Deathworlders before. Her reply ended the conversation. First document, the Galactic Trade Station hummed with activity as hundreds of species moved through its massive corridors. Commander Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire strutted through the crowd, his forearms swinging with practiced authority. His purple carapace gleamed under the artificial lights, and the scars across his face told stories of battles won. Behind him, his squad of elite warriors followed in perfect formation, their weapons visible and their intentions clear. The Vorthans had built their reputation on conquest. For 300 cycles, they had expanded their empire by crushing resistance on dozens of worlds. They called themselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy, and few dared to disagree. Their military might was legendary, their tactics brutal, and their victories countless. Zethkar stopped at the central trading hub, where merchants from across the galaxy gathered to conduct business. His eyes scanned the crowd with the calculating gaze of a predator. The Vorthans were here for more than trade. They were scouting for their next target, looking for worlds rich in resources and weak in defense. "Commander," whispered his lieutenant Vextal, "the intelligence reports mention a new species in this sector. Humans, they call themselves. They come from a world called Earth." Zethkar's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Another primitive species, no doubt. What do we know about them?" "Very little, sir. They appeared in galactic space only recently. Their technology seems adequate, but nothing special. They have established a few colonies and trading posts." The commander nodded. "Typical expansion pattern of a young species. They probably think they're ready for the big galaxy." He laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "We'll add their worlds to our empire soon enough." As they moved deeper into the station, Zethkar noticed something unusual. Near one of the smaller trading stalls, a crowd had gathered. The beings there seemed agitated, their voices raised in excitement or fear. Curious, the Vorthan commander pushed through the crowd to see what was causing the disturbance. At the center of the commotion stood a human female. She was smaller than most of the aliens around her, with pale skin and dark hair pulled back in a simple style. Her clothing was practical, not ornate like the dress of most successful traders, but something about her presence commanded attention. She stood perfectly still while chaos erupted around her, her dark eyes calm and observant. "What happened here?" Zethkar demanded, his voice cutting through the noise. A Tremoran merchant, his tentacles writhing with distress, pointed at the human. She destroyed my security drone with her bare hands. It was trying to scan her cargo, standard procedure, and she just crushed it." Zethkar looked at the remains of the drone scattered across the floor. It had been a military-grade scanner, tough enough to withstand small explosions. Now it lay in pieces, twisted metal and sparking circuits. He turned his gaze to the human, studying her more carefully. She couldn't be more than 5.5 feet tall, probably weighing less than most Vorthan children. Her arms looked thin, almost fragile compared to his own massive limbs, yet she had apparently destroyed advanced technology with nothing but physical force. "Impressive," he said, stepping closer to her. "But destroying property in a neutral trading station is a serious offense. Perhaps you don't understand galactic law." The human looked up at him, meeting his gaze without flinching. "I understand it perfectly. The law also says forced scanning of private cargo without proper warrants is illegal. Your Tremoran friend here was trying to steal my trade secrets." Her voice was calm, controlled, but Zethkar heard something underneath it, a hardness that reminded him of veterans who had seen real combat. It was strange to hear such a tone from someone who looked so young and small. "You speak boldly for someone from such a primitive world," Zethkar said, his own voice carrying a subtle threat. "Do you know who I am?" "Commander Zethkar of the Vorthan Empire," she replied immediately. "Conqueror of 17 worlds, destroyer of the Kelthian resistance, terror of the outer rim sectors." She paused, tilting her head slightly. "You're shorter than I expected." The crowd around them fell silent. No one spoke to a Vorthan commander like that, especially not someone from an unknown species. Zethkar felt his temper rising, but he maintained his composure. This human was either very brave or very stupid. "You know of our reputation," he said. "Then you know what happens to those who oppose us. We have fought against the strongest warriors in the galaxy. We have conquered deathworlds that would kill most species just by breathing their air." The human nodded slowly. "Deathworlders? Yes, I've heard about them. The Nexari from their volcanic homeworld. The Kethaval who evolved in radioactive wastelands. The ice warriors of Frostheim. She paused again and something flickered in her dark eyes. Tough opponents, I'm sure. The toughest, Zethkar confirmed, puffing up with pride. Deathworlders are the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Their home environments forged them into living weapons. We have defeated them all. The human was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Around them, the crowd pressed closer, sensing that something significant was happening. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was still calm, still controlled. But now there was something else in it, something that made even Zethkar's veteran warriors shift nervously behind him. That's interesting, she said, because Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest rating in the galactic database. She took a small step forward, and somehow that tiny movement made her seem larger, more dangerous. Everything on my planet is trying to kill everything else. We have predators that hunt in packs, weather that can destroy cities, diseases that can wipe out entire populations. We have wars that last for decades and weapons that can crack planets. She paused, letting that sink in. We humans don't just live on a death world, Commander. We conquered it. We turned it into our garden. We made friends with some of the monsters and weapons out of others. And then, when we got bored with our own planet, we looked up at the stars and decided to see what other impossible things we could make possible. The station around them had gone completely quiet. Even the background hum of machinery seemed muted. Zethkar felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Uncertainty. The human smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. So when you say you've fought Deathworlders before, Commander, I believe you. But you've never fought anything like us. She turned away from him then, as if he was no longer worth her attention, and began walking toward the docking bays. The crowd parted before her like water, beings stepping aside instinctively. Zethkar stood frozen, his mind racing. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy had just shifted. He claimed he'd fought Deathworlders before. Her reply ended the conversation. Second Document Commander Zethkar watched the human disappear into the crowd, his four hands clenched into fists. The silence around him stretched uncomfortably long before the normal sounds of the trading station gradually returned. Aliens began moving again, but he noticed how they gave him a wider berth than usual. Some even looked at him with what appeared to be pity. Sir, Lieutenant Vextal whispered urgently. Should we pursue her? Detain her for questioning? Zethkar didn't answer immediately. His mind was still processing what had just happened. In 3 centuries of conquest, no one had ever dismissed him so completely. The human had spoken to him like he was an annoying child, then walked away as if he posed no threat at all. Commander? Vextal pressed. No, Zethkar said finally. We return to the ship. Now. The march back to their vessel was different from their arrival. Where before they had moved with the confidence of apex predators, now there was tension in their ranks. The other species on the station watched them pass with expressions that had changed from fear to curiosity. Once aboard their cruiser, the dominant Fang, Zethkar sealed himself in his private quarters and activated his personal database. He needed to know more about these humans and their world. The human female's words echoed in his mind. Class 12 Death World. The highest rating in the galactic database. The search results made his blood run cold. Earth's gravity was 30% higher than Vorthon standard, meaning these humans lived their entire lives under crushing weight that would exhaust most species within hours. Their atmosphere contained 21% oxygen, a concentration so high it was literally explosive. Most species required breathing apparatus just to visit worlds with half that level. The temperature variations were extreme, swinging from conditions that would freeze Vorthon blood solid to heat that would cook their flesh. Yet humans lived comfortably in both extremes. Their planet's weather systems regularly produced storms with winds that could shred metal, lightning that could power small cities, and pressure changes that would rupture the organs of most galactic species. But it was the biological reports that truly disturbed him. Earth teemed with life forms that defied rational explanation. Microscopic organisms that could survive in the vacuum of space, creatures that lived in boiling acid springs, predators with enough poison in their bodies to kill thousands, plants that could strangle trees, bacteria that consumed metal, and the humans had not just survived in this nightmare environment. They had thrived. They had domesticated some of the most dangerous creatures as companions. They consumed foods that were toxic to most other species. They engaged in recreational activities that would be considered torture by galactic standards. The files included a section on human warfare that made Zethkar's carapace crawl. These beings had spent thousands of years fighting each other with increasingly creative and devastating methods. They had developed weapons that could poison entire continents, bombs that could turn sand into glass, biological agents that could rewrite genetic codes. They had fought wars in the frozen wastes of their polar regions, in jungles where every plant and animal was deadly, in deserts that could kill through dehydration in hours. They had battled on the surfaces of their oceans during storms that would sink most galactic vessels. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Zethkar accepted it reluctantly, expecting another routine report from his intelligence division. Instead, Admiral Korthak's massive form materialized in the hologram. The Supreme Commander of the Vorthan fleet looked displeased, his scarred features set in a permanent scowl. "Commander Zethkar," the Admiral's voice rumbled like distant thunder, "I have received some disturbing reports from the trading station. Something about an incident with a human. Admiral, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you allowed a single member of a primitive species to humiliate you in public. That you walked away from a confrontation without asserting Vorthan dominance." Korthak's eyes blazed with fury. "Do you have any idea how this makes our empire look?" Zethkar straightened. "Admiral, these humans may not be as primitive as we initially believed. Their homeworld is irrelevant." Korthak roared. "We have conquered dozens of Deathworlds. The difficulty of their environment means nothing if they lack military strength. You will return to that station immediately and make an example of this human. Show the galaxy that no one disrespects the Vorthan Empire." The hologram flickered off before Zethkar could respond. He sat in silence for several minutes, staring at the blank space where the Admiral's image had been. Orders were orders. He would have to return to the station and confront the human again. But first, he needed more information. Zethkar activated his communication array and sent a priority message to Vorthan Intelligence Command. Within an hour, he was speaking with Agent Yildan, one of their best information brokers. "What can you tell me about human military capabilities?" Zethkar asked without preamble. "Humans?" Yildan's tentacles writhed in confusion. "They're barely spacefaring. Why would you need intelligence on them?" "Just answer the question." "Well, their technology is adequate but not exceptional. Standard fusion drives, basic energy shields, kinetic weapons mostly. Their ships are sturdy but unimaginative. Typical young species stuff. What about ground combat?" "Unknown. They haven't engaged in any major conflicts since entering galactic space. Some minor skirmishes with pirates, but nothing significant." "Why the interest, Commander?" Zethkar disconnected without answering. The official reports painted humans as unremarkable, but the database information about their world told a different story. Either galactic intelligence was incomplete, or these humans were deliberately hiding their true capabilities. A new message arrived, this one from the trading station's security office. The human female had filed a formal complaint against the Tremoran merchant for attempted illegal scanning. She had provided her identification, Captain Sarah Chen of the independent trading vessel Persistence. Zethkar smiled grimly. At least now he had a name and a ship to track. He made his way to the bridge of the Dominant Fang where his crew snapped to attention. "Navigator, set course for the trading station. Communications, scan for any vessels registered to human ownership." "Sir," his sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting a human ship in the station's docking bay. It's unusual." "How so?" "The whole configuration is unlike anything in our database. Very dense construction, unusual alloy composition. And, sir, it's armed." Zethkar moved to examine the sensor readings himself. The ship called Persistence was indeed heavily armed, but not in any way he recognized. The weapons appeared to be kinetic accelerators of some kind, but with modifications that made no sense. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "I'm intercepting a transmission from the human vessel. They appear to be speaking with someone off station. Can you decode it?" "Partially. They're using a basic galactic trade language but with some unknown terminology." The officer paused, listening to his equipment. "They're discussing cargo manifests? No, wait. Combat readiness reports." Zethkar felt his certainty wavering. The human ship wasn't behaving like a simple trading vessel, and the female he had encountered certainly hadn't acted like a typical merchant. "Commander," his tactical officer said quietly, "I've been analyzing the human ship's design. If these specifications are accurate, that vessel could probably destroy us. The bridge fell silent. The dominant Fang was a state-of-the-art Vorthon cruiser, capable of reducing most planets to rubble. The idea that a ship belonging to a supposedly primitive species could threaten it was almost unthinkable. Almost. Zethkar stared at the readings, remembering the calm confidence in Captain Chen's dark eyes. She hadn't been afraid of him because she had no reason to be afraid. She commanded a ship that could turn his cruiser into scrap metal, and she knew it. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Zethkar wondered if the Vorthon Empire had finally encountered something it couldn't conquer. He claimed he'd fought Deathworlders before. Her reply ended the conversation. Third document Captain Sarah Chen stood in the cargo bay of the Persistence, running final checks on the concealed weapon systems. The trading station's sensors would register her ship as a simple merchant vessel, but underneath the innocent exterior lay enough firepower to level a small moon. Every human vessel was built this way now, ever since they had learned how hostile the galaxy really was. "Captain," her communications officer Marcus called over the intercom. "We've got Vorthon interest. Their cruiser just arrived at the station and they're scanning us pretty intensively." Sarah smiled grimly. "Let them look. They'll see exactly what we want them to see." She made her way to the bridge where her crew of 12 moved with quiet efficiency. The Persistence wasn't large by galactic standards, but every inch of space was optimized for maximum capability. Human engineering had always favored function over form. "Report," she said, settling into her command chair. "The Vorthon cruiser Dominant Fang is maintaining position near the station," Marcus reported. "They've requested docking permission, but station control is being slow to approve. Probably nervous about having two potential hostile forces in close proximity." Sarah's tactical officer, Lieutenant Kim Nakamura, looked up from her console. "Captain, I've got a full analysis of their ship. It's exactly what we expected from Vorthon military doctrine. Heavy armor, massive energy weapons designed for overwhelming firepower and direct confrontation. Weaknesses? Several. Their power systems are centralized, making them vulnerable to precision strikes. Their maneuvering thrusters are poorly protected, and their reactor signatures suggest they're running near maximum efficiency just to maintain basic operations. No reserve capacity for emergency situations." Sarah nodded. Human ships were designed with multiple redundancies and independent systems. If you destroyed half the Persistence, the other half would keep fighting. Fourth-hand philosophy seemed to assume their enemies would be too intimidated or too dead to exploit weaknesses. "Captain," Dr. Reeves called from his position at the science station, "I'm monitoring the Vorthon internal communications. They're trying to decode our transmissions, but they're having trouble with our encryption." "What are they most curious about?" "Our weapon systems. They can't figure out how our kinetic accelerators work. Their analysis software keeps giving them error messages." Sarah wasn't surprised. Human kinetic weapons didn't rely on exotic energy or complex targeting systems. They simply threw very heavy objects very fast. The elegance was in their simplicity and the devastating efficiency of their impact. A human railgun could punch through most energy shields because it wasn't using energy. It was using physics. "Captain Chen," a new voice came over the communication array. "This is Commander Zethkar of the Vorthon Empire. I request permission to board your vessel for a formal diplomatic meeting." Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. Marcus shrugged. "Diplomatic immunity means we have to consider it, Captain. But it's your call." "Open a channel," Sarah said. She activated the view screen and Commander Zethkar's imposing figure filled the display. He looked even more intimidating through the camera, his battle scars more prominent, his forearms positioned in a clearly threatening display. "Commander," Sarah said pleasantly, "how nice to hear from you again. I'm afraid my ship isn't really equipped for diplomatic meetings. Perhaps we could discuss whatever concerns you have over the communication system." "I prefer face-to-face meetings," Zethkar replied. His voice carried an undertone of command that probably worked well on most species. It shows proper respect between military commanders. "Military commanders?" Sarah raised an eyebrow. "I think there's been some confusion. I'm a civilian trader, not military personnel." The lie came easily. Technically, she was a reserve officer in the Terran Defense Force, but her current mission was classified as a trade operation. The Vorthons didn't need to know about the advanced sensor equipment hidden in her cargo hold or the detailed intelligence. Reports she was gathering on alien military capabilities. My sensors suggest otherwise, Zethkar said. Your vessel is heavily armed for a trading ship. Space is dangerous, Sarah replied. Pirates, stellar phenomena, aggressive wildlife on some planets. A smart trader invests in protection. The weapons I'm detecting could destroy a battlecruiser. Sarah's smile didn't waver. Commander, I think your sensors might be malfunctioning. The Persistence is equipped with standard defensive systems only. Perhaps the radiation from the station's reactor is interfering with your readings? She could see the frustration building in Zethkar's expression. He knew she was lying, but he couldn't prove it. And in galactic space, accusations without evidence were considered poor diplomatic form. Very well, he said finally. Perhaps you would join me on the station for a meal. There are several excellent establishments that cater to carnivorous species. Sarah considered this. Meeting the Vorthon commander in a neutral location would give her a chance to gather more intelligence about their capabilities and intentions. It would also demonstrate that humans weren't afraid of potential threats. That sounds lovely, she said. Shall we meet at the Nexus restaurant in 1 hour? I hear they have excellent Earth cuisine. The channel closed and Sarah turned to her crew. Kim, I want you monitoring our conversation through passive sensors. Marcus, maintain communication silence but be ready for emergency extraction. If this goes badly, I don't want them tracking our signals back to Earth. Captain, Dr. Reeves said quietly. Are you sure about this? The Vorthons have a reputation for taking hostages. They have a reputation for conquering inferior species, Sarah corrected. We're about to find out how they handle equals. An hour later, Sarah walked into the Nexus restaurant, one of the trading station's more upscale establishments. The interior was designed to accommodate dozens of different species, with variable gravity fields, atmospheric controls, and furniture that could adapt to any body configuration. Commander Zethkar was already seated at a table near the back, his massive frame making the adaptive furniture look fragile. He had chosen a spot with clear sight lines to all entrances and exits. Good tactical positioning. 2 of his warriors flanked him at nearby tables, trying to look casual while remaining obviously ready for combat. Sarah approached alone, wearing simple civilian clothing, but moving with the controlled grace of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. She noted the positions of the Vorthon soldiers, identified potential cover, and calculated the time it would take her to reach the emergency exits. Captain Chen, Zethkar stood as she approached, a gesture of respect that seemed genuine. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Commander, Sarah replied, taking a seat across from him. This is a pleasant surprise. I don't often dine with representatives of galactic empires. A server approached, a nervous-looking Zelian whose tentacles trembled slightly as he recognized the Vorthon uniform. Zethkar ordered something that looked like raw meat in a spicy sauce. Sarah requested a simple salad and water. You eat plants, Zethkar observed. Among other things, humans are omnivores. We eat whatever keeps us alive. Most carnivorous species find plant consumption unnatural, Sarah smiled. Most species haven't spent millennia learning to survive on a world where being picky about food meant starving to death. We eat what's available and adapt to what we need. The food arrived quickly. The server clearly wanted to spend as little time as possible near their table. Zethkar tore into his meal with savage efficiency, while Sarah ate her salad with calm precision. I've been researching your species, Zethkar said between bites. Your homeworld is indeed classified as a Class 12 death world. I admit this was unexpected. Most species seem surprised when they learn about Earth. I suppose it's hard to imagine until you've experienced it yourself. What makes it so dangerous? Sarah considered how much to reveal. Everything, really. The weather alone would kill most galactic species within hours. Then there are the geological instabilities, the radiation levels, the atmospheric composition, the native life forms. She paused. But the real danger isn't any single element. It's how they all work together to create an environment where only the strongest, smartest, and most adaptable survive. Yet humans not only survived, but built a technological civilization. We did what we had to do. Sarah's voice carried a matter-of-fact tone that somehow made her words more ominous than any boast. Adaptation isn't just survival for humans, Commander. It's who we are. He claimed he'd fought Deathworlders before. Her reply ended the conversation. Fourth document, Commander Zethkar studied the human female across the table, searching for any sign of deception or weakness. Captain Chen ate her meal with methodical precision, her movements economical and controlled. Everything about her suggested someone accustomed to danger, yet she appeared completely relaxed in his presence. "Tell me about human warfare," he said suddenly. Sarah looked up from her salad, her dark eyes meeting his gaze steadily. "That's an interesting conversation topic over dinner, Commander. Are you planning to write a research paper? I am trying to understand your species. The Vorthon Empire has encountered many forms of combat, but I confess human methods are unclear to me. What would you like to know?" Zethkar leaned forward slightly. "My intelligence reports suggest humans have spent considerable time fighting each other. This seems wasteful. Why not unite and conquer other worlds instead?" Sarah smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We did unite eventually, but the fighting taught us things that peaceful species never learn. It made us better at war than anyone who only fought external enemies, such as creativity for one thing. When you're fighting your own species, you can't rely on technological superiority or overwhelming force. Your enemies are just as smart as you are, just as well equipped, just as motivated. So you have to get creative." She paused to take a sip of water. "We learned to fight in every possible environment. Underground, underwater, in the air, in space, in Arctic conditions, in deserts, in jungles. We developed tactics for urban warfare, guerrilla warfare, siege warfare, mobile warfare. We learned to fight with limited resources, improvised weapons, stolen equipment." Zethkar's mandibles clicked nervously. "But surely this internal conflict weakened your species." "Did it?" Sarah's voice carried a challenging note. "Let me ask you something, Commander. How many ways can your people kill an enemy?" "What do you mean?" "Exactly what I said. How many different methods of eliminating a threat do Vorthon warriors know?" Zethkar considered this. "Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, plasma cannons, explosive devices, hand-to-hand combat with bladed weapons. Perhaps a dozen different approaches. Humans know thousands." The simple statement hit Zethkar like a physical blow. Sarah continued calmly. "We've weaponized everything. Chemistry, biology, physics, psychology, economics, weather, gravity, radiation, sound, light, electromagnetic fields, genetic codes. We've turned farming equipment into weapons, household chemicals into explosives, children's toys into surveillance devices." She leaned back in her chair. "We've fought wars where the weapons were so terrible that we agreed to never use them again. Then we invented worse ones. We've poisoned entire continents, created plagues that could wipe out species, built bombs that could crack planets. And then we looked at all of that and decided it wasn't efficient enough." Zethkar felt his confidence cracking. "You're exaggerating. Am I?" Sarah reached into her pocket and withdrew what looked like a simple writing instrument. "This pen contains enough neurotoxin to kill everyone in this restaurant within minutes. The ink is actually a binary poison, harmless until it contacts oxygen, then lethal to most carbon-based life forms." She placed the pen on the table between them. "I'm not armed, Commander. This is just a tool I use for taking notes during trading negotiations. But in an emergency, it becomes a weapon capable of eliminating dozens of enemies." Zethkar stared at the innocent-looking object, his four hands instinctively moving away from it. That cannot be legal under galactic commerce regulations. It's not classified as a weapon. It's office supplies." Sarah's smile was sharp. "Humans have a saying, Commander. The most dangerous weapon is an open mind. We can turn anything into a tool of destruction if we need to." The Vorthon commander was beginning to understand why his sensors had been giving him confusing readings about the human ship. If they could weaponize office supplies, what had they done to a starship? "Your vessel," he said carefully. "The weapons my sensors detected. What are they really?" "Kinetic accelerators, like I said. We fire solid projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. Very simple technology, really. The complex part is the manufacturing." "Manufacturing?" "Each projectile is custom built for its target. We don't just shoot chunks of metal, Commander. We design each round specifically for what we want to destroy. Need to penetrate heavy armor? We use depleted uranium cores with shaped charges. Want to disable electronics? Electromagnetic pulse warheads, fighting biological enemies? We have rounds that release tailored toxins or viruses." Sarah picked up her water glass, studying the liquid inside. This water, for example. On Earth, it would be considered pure enough to drink safely, but it contains trace elements that would be lethal to several galactic species. We didn't add poison. We just didn't remove naturally occurring minerals that happen to be toxic to aliens. She took a sip. Even our life support systems are weapons, Commander. The atmosphere on my ship would kill most species in minutes. The gravity would crush them. The temperature would cook them. We've literally weaponized the act of breathing. Zethkar's confidence was completely shattered now. He had thought he was meeting with a primitive trader, but he was sitting across from something far more dangerous. The human female wasn't just from a death world. She was a living weapon herself, and she was making it very clear that her entire species shared these characteristics. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because you asked," Sarah replied simply, "and because I want you to understand something important. The Vorthan Empire has built its reputation on conquering Deathworlders. That's impressive. But you've been fighting species that evolved to survive their environments." She leaned forward slightly. "Humans didn't just survive our environment, Commander. We conquered it, tamed it, and then used it as a training ground to become the most effective killers in the galaxy. Every human child grows up learning to fight for survival in conditions that would destroy most galactic species." Every child? Every child. They learn to swim in waters that contain predators capable of biting them in half. They climb mountains where a single mistake means death. They play sports that routinely cause injuries that would hospitalize most aliens. They eat foods that are toxic to other species and consider it normal. Sarah's voice remained calm, conversational, but her words painted a picture that terrified the Vorthan commander. By the time a human reaches adulthood, they've already survived challenges that would kill most galactic warriors. And then we give them military training. She stood up from the table. "Thank you for dinner, Commander. It's been educational." Zethkar watched her walk away, his mind reeling. Around them, the restaurant continued its normal operations, but he felt as if he had just glimpsed into an abyss. The human female had revealed capabilities that made his empire's military might seem primitive by comparison. Worse, she had done it while eating a salad and drinking water, as casually as discussing the weather. There had been no threats, no boasts, no displays of aggression. Just a simple explanation of facts that redefined everything he thought he knew about warfare. As Captain Chen disappeared into the crowd at the restaurant entrance, Zethkar realized that his empire had not encountered a species they could conquer. They had encountered something that could conquer them. He claimed he'd fought Deathworlders before. Her reply ended the conversation. Fifth Document Commander Zethkar sat alone in the restaurant for several minutes after Captain Chen departed, his meal forgotten and growing cold. The casual way she had described human capabilities had shaken him more than any direct threat could have. When his warriors approached to check on him, he waved them away with a gesture that brooked no argument. His personal communicator chimed with an incoming priority message. Admiral Korthak's image appeared on the small screen, his expression even more severe than usual. "Commander, I expect a full report on your meeting with the human. Have you resolved this diplomatic embarrassment?" Zethkar looked at his superior, searching for the right words. How could he explain that the embarrassment was far worse than anyone had imagined? That they weren't dealing with a simple primitive species, but potentially the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. "Admiral, I believe we may need to reconsider our approach to the human species." "Reconsider?" Korthak's voice rose dangerously. "Commander, are you suggesting that the mighty Vorthan Empire should bow to a single female from an unknown world?" "No, sir. I'm suggesting that we may have underestimated the strategic situation." "Explain, quickly." Zethkar chose his words carefully. The humans come from a Class 12 death world. Their evolutionary development has been shaped by extreme survival pressures. This has resulted in capabilities that may exceed our initial projections. Capabilities such as what? Advanced weapons technology disguised as civilian equipment. Military doctrine based on asymmetric warfare. Combat experience gained through extensive intraspecies conflict. Zethkar paused. "Sir, this human female just explained to me how her species has weaponized their basic life support systems." Admiral Korthak was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone was dangerously quiet. "Commander, are you telling me that you are afraid of a single human?" The accusation hit Zethkar like a physical blow. Fear was not an emotion that Vorthan warriors were supposed to experience, and admitting to it was tantamount to confession of cowardice. "No, sir," he lied. "I am recommending a more thorough intelligence assessment before we proceed with standard conquest protocols." Standard protocols have served us well for 3 centuries, Commander. We will not change our methods because one primitive throws a tantrum. Korthak leaned closer to the screen. You will arrest this human and bring her to me for interrogation. That is a direct order. The transmission ended before Zethkar could respond. He stared at the blank screen, feeling the weight of impossible orders settling on his shoulders. Arresting Captain Chen would mean boarding her ship or confronting her on the station, both of which would likely result in violence. And after their conversation, he was no longer confident that his forces would emerge victorious from such a confrontation. Sir? Lieutenant Vextal approached cautiously. Is everything all right? Prepare the boarding teams, Zethkar said reluctantly. We have orders to arrest the human female. Vextal's carapace shifted to a darker purple, a sign of nervousness among their species. Sir, the human ship appears to have increased power to its defensive systems. Our sensors are detecting significant energy buildup in their weapons arrays. They know we're coming. It appears so, sir. Should I request additional support vessels? Zethkar considered this. Calling for reinforcements would take hours, and Admiral Korthak expected immediate results. More importantly, requesting help would be an admission that his own forces were insufficient to handle a single human ship. No. We proceed with current assets. He stood up from the table, leaving payment for the meal he hadn't finished. Have all teams meet at Docking Bay 7. Full combat gear. The march through the trading station attracted considerable attention. When word spread that the Vorthons were mounting a military operation against the human ship, many species began evacuating the area. The station's security forces maintained a careful distance, unwilling to interfere with Imperial business but clearly nervous about potential collateral damage. At Docking Bay 7, Zethkar's assault teams made final preparations. 40 of the Empire's finest warriors, equipped with the latest weapons and armor, prepared to board a single trading vessel. Under normal circumstances, it would be massive overkill, but nothing about this situation felt normal. Commander, his communications officer reported, the human ship is responding to our presence. They're requesting clarification of our intentions. Tell them we are conducting a lawful arrest under Imperial authority. Sir, they're asking to see the arrest warrant and the specific charges. Zethkar hesitated. The Vorthon Empire rarely bothered with legal formalities when dealing with inferior species. They took what they wanted and imposed their will through superior force, but the trading station operated under neutral galactic law, which required proper documentation for arrests. Tell them the warrant is being prepared, he said finally. Sir, the communications officer looked uncomfortable. They say they'll wait exactly 10 minutes for proper documentation. After that, they consider any boarding attempt to be an act of piracy. The audacity was breathtaking. A single human was dictating terms to the Vorthon Empire, and doing it through proper legal channels that made resistance difficult. Commander, Lieutenant Vextal approached with a data pad. I've been analyzing the human ship's defensive posture. Their weapons are now fully charged and targeted on our position. If they fire, we'll have approximately 3 seconds to reach cover. Their weapons can't penetrate station armor. Sir, I don't think they're planning to fire at the station. They're targeting our ship. Zethkar turned to look through the bay's viewing port at the dominant Fang, moored at the adjacent docking facility. His flagship was the pride of the Vorthon fleet, capable of destroying most opponents with ease. The idea that a simple trading vessel could threaten it seemed impossible, but then many things about humans seemed impossible. Sir, the communications officer called out urgently. Incoming message from the human ship. It's unusual. Explain. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. They say they want to make sure everyone can hear their response to our actions. A screen activated, showing Captain Chen standing on what appeared to be her ship's bridge. Behind her, Zethkar could see her crew moving with quiet efficiency, their hands never straying far from their weapons. Commander Zethkar, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the station's communication array. I understand you wish to arrest me. May I ask what charges you're planning to file? The question was broadcast to every ship and facility in the sector. Dozens of species were now watching to see how the Vorthon Empire would respond to a simple legal inquiry. Zethkar activated his own communicator, aware that his response would be recorded and transmitted throughout galactic space. You are charged with destruction of property and disrespect to Imperial authority. I see. Captain Chen nodded thoughtfully. Property destruction refers to the illegal scanner that tried to violate my cargo hold, I assume. The one that was operating without proper warrants in violation of galactic trade law. The nature of the scanning device is irrelevant. Actually, it's quite relevant under galactic law. Station security has confirmed that the device was indeed illegal. She held up a datapad. I have the official report right here. As for disrespect to Imperial authority, could you clarify what specific law I'm accused of violating? Zethkar found himself trapped. There was no law against disrespecting the Vorthan Empire, at least not in neutral space. Their usual methods of imposing authority relied on intimidation and superior force, not legal proceedings. Furthermore, Captain Chen continued, I should point out that any attempt to board my vessel without proper warrants will be considered an act of piracy under galactic law. My ship is legally entitled to defend itself against unlawful boarding attempts. She paused, letting that sink in. I'm sure the commander understands the implications of committing piracy in neutral space, especially with so many witnesses present. The trap was complete. If Zethkar proceeded with the boarding, he would be violating galactic law in full view of dozens of species. If he retreated, he would appear weak and ineffective. Either choice would damage the Empire's reputation. Captain Chen, he said slowly, you seem remarkably well informed about galactic law for a simple trader. Her smile was sharp and predatory. Humans learn quickly, Commander. It's one of our survival traits. He claimed he'd fought Deathworlders before. Her reply ended the conversation. Sixth document, the standoff in Docking Bay 7 stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Commander Zethkar stood with his assault teams, facing the impossible choice between legal humiliation and military disaster. Around them, the trading station had fallen eerily quiet as word spread about the confrontation between the Vorthan Empire and a single human ship. Captain Chen's voice cut through the tension. Commander, I'm going to make this simple for everyone involved. I'm leaving this station in exactly 5 minutes. You can either allow me to depart peacefully, or you can try to stop me. But I want everyone listening to understand exactly what those choices mean. On the view screen, she moved closer to the camera. If you allow me to leave, this incident ends here. No one gets hurt, no laws are broken, and the Vorthan Empire can maintain its reputation for reasonable behavior in neutral space. She paused, her dark eyes seeming to stare directly at Zethkar despite the distance between them. If you try to stop me, you'll be committing an act of piracy against a legally registered vessel operating under galactic trade law. More importantly, you'll be declaring war on humanity. The words hit the docking bay like a bomb. Declaring war on an entire species over a simple arrest was an escalation that would require approval from the highest levels of the Empire. It would also mean accepting responsibility for whatever consequences followed. You're bluffing, Zethkar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Captain Chen's smile was cold. Let me tell you something about human psychology, Commander. We don't make threats we're not prepared to follow through on, and we have a very long memory for people who hurt our own. She gestured to someone off camera and new information appeared on the screen. Star charts, fleet positions, resource assessments. While we've been talking, my ship has been transmitting detailed intelligence reports to the Terran Defense Force. They now know the exact position, capabilities, and weaknesses of every Vorthan vessel in this sector. Zethkar felt his blood turn to ice. The human ship had been conducting military reconnaissance while disguised as a trading mission. They had gathered comprehensive intelligence on Vorthan forces and transmitted it to their military command. Furthermore, Captain Chen continued, Terran Command has been monitoring this conversation through real-time communication links. If my ship is attacked or if I fail to report in on schedule, they will assume I've been killed or captured by hostile forces. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't sent a simple trader to this sector. They had sent a military intelligence officer with direct communication links to their fleet command. Any action against her would be an act of war against a species whose capabilities were still largely unknown. How many ships does humanity have? Lieutenant Vextel whispered urgently. Zethkar didn't answer because he didn't know. The humans had appeared in galactic space only recently, establishing a few trading posts and colonies. But if they could build ships like the Persistence and disguise military operations as commercial ventures, their true fleet strength was anyone's guess. Commander, Captain Chen's voice drew his attention back to the screen. I'm reading elevated stress patterns from your crew. I think you're beginning to understand the situation you're in. She was right. His warriors were nervous, and they had good reason to be. They had entered what they thought was a simple arrest operation and found themselves on the brink of interstellar war with an unknown enemy. 3 minutes remaining, she announced. Zethkar's communicator chimed with another priority message from Admiral Korthak. The Admiral's image appeared, his expression furious. Commander, I'm monitoring this transmission. Arrest that human immediately. I don't care about galactic law or neutral space. Imperial authority supersedes all other considerations. Admiral, Zethkar said carefully, the situation has become complicated. This human appears to be conducting military intelligence operations. Attacking her could be considered an act of war. War? Korthak laughed harshly. With what? A few trading ships? The humans are a primitive species with no significant military assets. Crush this rebellion before it spreads to other species. But Zethkar was no longer certain about human capabilities. Everything he had learned in the past few hours suggested that appearances were deceiving. The humans might look primitive, but their technology, tactics, and psychology were sophisticated beyond anything he had expected. Sir, he said slowly, I request permission to allow the human vessel to depart pending a full intelligence assessment. Absolutely not. You will board that ship and arrest its crew. That is a direct order. The communication link closed, leaving Zethkar with an impossible decision: follow orders and potentially start a war with an unknown enemy, or disobey direct commands from his superior officer. 2 minutes, Captain Chen announced. Around the docking bay, his assault teams looked to him for orders. These were veteran warriors who had followed him through dozens of successful campaigns. They trusted his judgment and would follow him into battle without question. But for the first time in his career, he wasn't certain that courage and loyalty would be enough. Sir, Vextel approached quietly. What are your orders? Zethkar studied the human ship through the viewing port. It looked innocent enough, but he now knew that appearance meant nothing. The vessel probably contained enough firepower to destroy his entire force, and its crew had demonstrated tactical thinking that rivaled the Empire's best strategic minds. More importantly, Captain Chen had outmaneuvered him completely without firing a shot. She had used galactic law, information warfare, and psychological manipulation to turn a simple arrest into a potential disaster for the Empire. If this was what one human could accomplish with minimal resources, what could their entire species do with proper preparation? 1 minute, the announcement came. Zethkar made his decision. All teams stand down. Return to the ship, sir? Vextel looked confused. You heard me. We're leaving. His warriors looked at each other uncertainly, but they followed orders. The assault teams began filing out of the docking bay, their weapons lowered and their formation loose. It was a clear withdrawal, and everyone watching would know it. On the view screen, Captain Chen nodded slightly. A wise decision, Commander. I hope this marks the beginning of peaceful relations between our species. Do not mistake this for weakness, Zethkar replied. The Vorthan Empire has simply chosen to respect galactic law in neutral space. Of course, she agreed. And I'm sure that respect will be noted in my report to Terran Command. The screen went dark. Moments later, the human ship began undocking procedures. Zethkar watched through the viewing port as the Persistence maneuvered away from the station with precise, controlled movements. There was no haste in their departure, no sign of relief or fear. They left with the same calm confidence they had displayed throughout the encounter. As the ship disappeared into hyperspace, Zethkar realized that everything had changed. The Vorthan Empire had built its reputation on the assumption that they were the strongest force in the galaxy. Today they had encountered something that challenged that assumption, without even trying to prove superior strength. His communicator chimed again. Admiral Korthak's image appeared, his rage barely contained. Commander Zethkar, you are relieved of duty. Report to Fleet Headquarters immediately for court-martial proceedings. Zethkar looked at his superior officer and made another decision that would have been unthinkable hours earlier. With respect, Admiral, I submit my resignation from the Vorthan Imperial Fleet, effective immediately. For the first time in 300 years of expansion, the Vorthan Empire faced the possibility that they were not the apex predators of the galaxy, and the warrior who discovered this truth chose to walk away, rather than lead his people into a war they might not be able to win. As Commander Zethkar left the docking bay for the last time, he wondered if other species would be as fortunate when they encountered humanity. Something told him they would not.